You're watching CGTV, Community Government Television, Channel 11, Pitkin County, City of Aspen, and Town of Snowmass Village.
The City of Aspen, established in 1881, has over 220 full-time employees, a number that swells to more than 425 with the addition of seasonal and temporary workers. Organized into more than 20 departments, the City of Aspen provides major amenities like parks, a rec center, and open space, and services like utilities and police and Kids First to its residents and visitors. From the golf course to the Community Development Department, the Wheeler Opera House to the Parking Department, the City of Aspen and its employees strive to do the best job possible. A major goal of the city is keeping open communication between the government and the citizens. Welcome to City Matters, a show where the city does matter, and matters of the city are brought to you. Hi, and welcome to City Matters. I'm Mitzi Rapkin, Director of Community Relations for the City of Aspen, and I'm so honored to be joined by Skippy Mesirow today, one of our new City Council members. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So this is a great opportunity to just talk a little bit about who you are and the issues you care about. So first, let's talk a little bit about where did you grow up and how did you get kind of your public service ethic?
Yeah, I grew up in Chicago. My family, my grandparents started coming out here in the early 50s and bought property here in Snowmass in 67, like a year before the lifts opened. So Stein taught my mom and my uncle to ski when they were 2. My mom taught me to ski at 15 months because I guess 2 was like a long time to wait or something. So we've been kind of coming out here forever. And I back in Chicago, also grew up with my grandparents. So, I don't know, very hardworking, both came from nothing to something, extremely hardworking, service-oriented people. I don't know, it was just always sort of, and it wasn't always said, but it was just always driven home that you have a responsibility to not just yourself, but to your family, to your community, to those around you. And so even decades before I really knew I was into service, I was doing it. From Model UN to Young Democrats to, leadership conferences out in DC. If you had asked me, I'd be like, I wasn't interested in politics, but it turns out that I was.
Yeah. So when did you, I know you were coming here in the summers or in the winters all the time. When did you make the move to Aspen and what inspired you to come here full time?
So my junior year of high school, I ended up, rewind. As I mentioned, I grew up with my grandparents. My grandfather is probably my biggest role model and the person that I really look up to and model. He had Parkinson's for a long time, and so I was very much involved in the day-to-day care, which can be tough. And my junior year, when you're taking your ACTs and SATs and all that, I had a period where for about 3 months I just didn't go to school. I was just at the bedside. And the only 2 times that I left that entire time was when I just kind of couldn't take it anymore, and I drove myself up to Wisconsin to go skiing for the day and just decompress because it's my favorite activity. And somewhere around the same time, just random chance, a buddy of mine, David Canman, this 6'7" behemoth of a right guard and football team, just mentioned offhandedly to me that he was going to graduate early from high school. And I was like, you can do what? Okay. So I went in to talk to my counselor, and I was like, hey, can I do this? And she was like, yeah, and you only have to add 1 class because you're a crazy person and you've been taking 21 credits every semester. And so I decided that I was going to graduate early and move up to Aspen for a winter before I started school, because I'd always wanted to take a gap year, but I was concerned that if I did that, I wouldn't go back to school. And so, November 30th of 2003, I graduated early from high school, and 4 days later, I was driving up. Sorry, 30th was my birthday. December 4th, I graduated from high school, and the next day I was driving up here to live in the Commons and teach skiing, and it was the most fun thing ever. And I just loved it. So I ended up walking onto the freeride ski team in Boulder, which is where I went to school. I lived here in the winters, trained and competed, and went to summer school down there. Just had the best time. And then following college, I left for a number of years for the real world. And at some point, my job could be remote. I didn't have to be anywhere. And I just thought to myself, like, why aren't you in Aspen? That was spring 2011. And, at this point, you'd have to drag me away.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how it worked out.
So you have such a long history here. I know this might be a hard question, but was there a moment where after you moved here, you transitioned into realizing that the political realm was something that you wanted to enter? Like, was there a precipitating incident or?
No, there was a lot of them. It was gradual,
Yeah.
It was, so I had previously worked for then candidate Obama in 2008, President-elect Obama in 2009. And so I had worked in politics and had an interest in it. But while some of those experiences were great, a lot of them were not. I left Chicago and Springfield very uninspired. Just all the things that I was so jazzed about in the Obama campaign, like it was pretty much the opposite. And so I left that world thinking, hey, maybe that's there to go back to if I ever want to, but I'm going to try and have an impact outside of that because that system's just not working. And then when I moved back here, I met Jill Tehan and Riley Tippett. They were part of a group called then Aspen Democracy Initiative. I think it was actually through you that Jill invited me to like this whiteboard session about young people in policy. It kind of came off the top 10 goals of that city council. They asked me to take over that organization, which was really about public engagement, civic participation, something that I'm still obviously very passionate about. And then that conversation turned into what became Next Gen Commission, which became a commission of the city, which I then chaired for the first 2 terms. And then Mayor Skadron said, hey, you should apply for this thing called P&Z. And I was like, great, what's that? I'll do it. And then, I was, I don't know, maybe 3 months into P&Z, and I came back from a trip, and they were like, hey, you're vice chair. And I was like, cool. And then a year later, I was chairing that for a number of terms. We worked on, housing issues and civic participation issues. We saw a big increase in the younger demographic voting. And then we worked on the change of the election date, which was successful. And, for the first couple of years, we were really banging our heads against the wall, just feeling like we were failing at everything we were trying. And then all of a sudden we were on the wave and we were surfing and like things were being successful. And I was like, oh, I don't know, I can't swear on this show, but like, wow, you could actually get stuff done locally that has an immediate impact on people. And that was so cool. So it just sort of naturally snowballed, and then, decided to run for office. Here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were kind of alluding to instances on the Obama campaign that didn't please you. So, or just maybe threw you for a loop or exhausted you.
Yeah.
Tell me about running your campaign, and had you learned something from that, or
Right.
what was that experience like?
Well, I should say for all my OFA friends, that was the best job ever you could have out of college. I mean, you're working 120-hour weeks, sleeping in your office under your desk, and you don't care. The discontent came more working in the state house in Illinois. I'm not going to say the campaign in 2010 for Secretary of State that I ran was negative, but you're working with all the labor unions, you're working with all the wards and all the aldermen, and it's just people's intentions are not always what's best for the community. It's what's best for themselves. They're longtime employees. They're jaded and lazy. They don't care about the bottom line or the outcome. They show up to punch the card and leave. So that's really what I mean. And we're lucky that in Aspen we don't have that. So running my own campaign. So the first time I did it all wrong. I basically tried to run it myself with a good group of supporters. And I was not ready as a candidate. I thought I was. I had done probably the most homework in the field, but I don't think I was like ready in here. I was scared to offend people. I was scared to say the wrong thing. I wasn't able to like step into my own shoes the way I needed to. And the technical challenge of running your own campaign while trying to be the candidate, it's just not possible. And I would have told anyone else that at the time, but I forgot to tell myself.
Yeah.
As you do.
Yeah.
So this time, second go around, was just an awesome experience. I mean, we started planning months and months ahead of time. We brought in a really diverse team of people that I admire and look up to, and people I agree with and disagree with, but it doesn't matter. It was about getting someone who had expertise and experience in every area of Aspen, and to be supported by not just close friends, but, you know, the Joe DeSalvos and Bob Broadduses of the world. Like, you grow up hearing those stories, and it's just the most amazing thing. And you just feel like you can't let them down, and you can't let the town down. And it no longer felt like it had anything to do with me, but just what we wanted to get done, and put in a ton of work and knocked 4,000 plus doors and brought in random people like Nicole Burkholder, who did great design work, and it just was sort of firing on all cylinders, and it was amazing.
So, you know, I know one of your major issues was affordable housing,
Yep.
and we'll talk about that. What are a few of your other passionate areas of interest when it relates to issues in Aspen?
I have a lot of areas of passion, but the two things that I'm working hardest on day to day, hour by hour, are affordable housing, as you know, and then seeing Aspen become the first city in the country with 100% voter participation. In an age where democracy is being challenged, and in a town where we are best represented when everybody's involved, I just can't think of anything that is better for Aspen while also being so important for the rest of our country. So those are the two things that I'm really, really pushing. In addition to those, I mean, you know, environmental concerns are a huge point of passion for me. I think we're really lucky to have a council that is really ready to dig in on that. So I'm there as support structure, researcher, voice, cheerleader. But the day-to-day, you know, putting 5 hours in or 10 hours in, from a policy perspective, those two things come first for me. And it's because I like to, not just as an elected official, but as a nonprofit leader or an entrepreneur, always working from first principles. And to me, if people don't live here, everything else we do is irrelevant, because who are you doing it for? And because we make better decisions when everyone's at the table in a participatory fashion, if we can get everybody voting, that's the first step. And if we can accomplish to some degree of the goal, both of those, we will be in a far stronger position to attack and succeed in all those other things.
So with relation to affordable housing, I know like on the most base level, we just need more. So we need to build more, and the council has moved forward. But are there other issues around affordable housing, or do you want to elaborate on building more that you want to share?
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm most pushing right now when I sit down with fellow council members or private citizens is a 3-month process, participatory process to write a new social contract around affordable housing. We are 50 years into this experiment, and we no longer have a unified agreement on what is this program. Is it workforce housing? Is it affordable housing? Is it community housing? Who should it house as a result of that? Are children and retirees included? I would argue yes, others would argue no. If those things, once we get agreement on what this is for, okay, what's our existing stock? What's in the free market? How many units do we need to achieve that goal? How many people want to live here, right? I mean, I campaigned on 60% plus retirees and children, but that's because that's the last time the community said 60% of workers want to work here. Well, it's been 20 years since we even asked the question. Maybe 20% of workers want to live here because Carbondale and Basalt are cooler. Maybe 80% do because the commute's so terrible. Like, we don't really know. So I want to ask that question. I want that to boil down to a number of units that we need to provide to have the community here that we want. And then we're all in the same boat. We're rowing in the same direction. And it becomes so much easier to make decisions because everything requires trade-offs, right? Either it's density, or it's height, or it's sprawl, or it's additional money because you're buying very expensive property in the core. It's going to happen. And so then you can say, hey, look, we need 200 or 1,000 or 2,000 units, whatever that number ends up being. And there's this parcel X. And on this parcel, we can land Y for Z dollars. And here are the community context issues. Is this the best choice, right? And then we can really start moving forward. So to me, that first step is the most critical thing we should be doing right away, while concurrently we move forward with existing land bank properties where construction costs are only rising, et cetera.
Do you have any certain philosophy, or have you thought at all about, so you're talking about we don't know if it's workforce or employee or community, people who really want to work here and they want to work for nonprofits here, they want to contribute to the community, but they absolutely do not want to live in Aspen. They want to live down Valley. Do you have any thoughts about Aspen putting money into housing down Valley?
Well, what I would love to see is the beginning of a conversation that leads to a valley-wide housing authority. If we're not thinking about this as a valley, I think we are doing ourselves a massive disservice. The regional housing study that came out and the transportation study, seeing the flows of people is fascinating, right? I mean, people are going from Basalt in both directions. They're going to Basalt in both directions. They're leaving Aspen to go to Basalt, which is slowly becoming our office community. So I think we need to be thinking about those flows, where people want to live and want to work, and reducing traffic and environmental impacts where it's desired, and where it's not desired, being smart about that. Would we land city dollars outside the urban growth boundary is a very different question. I never close myself to any position because, as you learn, I think you should adapt your views. But as of right now, no. I think that Aspen has a responsibility to house the people who work here and who made this community or who were born here, who are vital to the thriving of our community, if they want to live here. And to me, when we look at that cost benefit of where do we create housing, how and why, which by the way is not always building, right? I mean, there are simple zoning changes we could make that could encourage far more development outside the city, or other ways to achieve housing without adding to the built environment. So to me, I look at two factors. First one is, what is the cost per person housed after land acquisition, build, and all that's required, right? Because we want to be efficient with our dollars. The second is some sort of multiplier factorial of how close it is to town, to center of town. Because I think there are huge benefits to a affordable housing project that is not just within city limits, but within really the central core of the city, from a economic standpoint, from a quality of life standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, from a traffic impact standpoint, and just from a general character of community standpoint. So to me, those are the things that I look at primarily.
So it seems actually, when you think about it, as complex as it is, the affordable housing goal is probably easier than a 100% voting goal. So how do you start to tackle that? Because you're asking people to do something that they just might not want to do.
Right.
How do you do that?
Right. I think that when most of the people who don't vote either feel their vote doesn't matter, feel detached from the community. And while if you live in a really blue or really red state in a presidential election, there might be some validity to that claim. There's zero validity to that claim here. The biggest development we have seen in years was less than 30 votes. The entrance to Aspen, the creation of the red brick, the creation of the Wheeler, these are less than 10 vote decisions. The number of city council members elected by less than 1% of the vote since we started keeping records in '79 is 23. So people might feel disaffected or they don't matter, but the facts are otherwise. And once they participate in that system and recognize that their vote does matter, that argument falls by the wayside, right? So part of this plan is doing active things from a, public information marketing event standpoint, where you're really going out and getting people excited and meeting them where they are. Part of it is the tactical side of voter registration, right? So think about mechanisms like automatic voter registration, which is very, very successful elsewhere for everyone in affordable housing, right? Well, right there, you've got 70%, right? You could do the same thing with a program when you turn 18 out at the high school. Education is a big piece in the long run, re-engaging civics and local civics at the high school and middle school level, creating bodies like NextGen, but for even that younger demographic to really get them involved. Then there's structural changes that you could make that would not just serve Aspen well, but serve as a model for the rest of the country, because part of what you're trying to build is trust. When you don't have trust in the system, you don't want to participate in the system. When you do, you participate. When you participate, you become represented. You're more likely to participate, and you feed that cycle. So public financing of campaigns, limited campaign seasons, restructuring things to make sure that people can actually run, right? Right now we pay city council members $17,000-ish. I'm telling you, it might not be the case for everyone, but this is a full-time job. I mean, I'm working 90 hours a week between that and my job. If you're a bartender or a service worker and you're looking at what it takes to campaign and you're looking at having to raise money for that campaign and you don't have big pocket donors or friends, you're not going to do that. And your government's not going to represent you, and then you're probably going to keep not voting. So we need to change all those structures. We should put voting in people's pockets. App-based voting is a thing now. It's safe, it's available, it's cheap. And when you're not voting, those same programs can be used for so much public information and feedback. So it's a big package of all of those things that work in concert. And yeah, we got to get it done.
All right. So 1 month. You've been in office 1 month. How's it been? What has anything surprised you? Has anything been a challenge? Has anything delighted you?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing delights me. Like,
Yeah.
I love the work. I am having so much fun. I feel rather like just made for this type of work. I'm really enjoying it. Things that I didn't expect. There's nothing that was a surprise, like, oh my God, I can't believe X. But I would say the difficulty of certain things versus other things and the amount of time required for some things versus other things is not necessarily what I expected. For instance, I thought getting alignment around policy X, Y, and Z was going to be really tough and was going to require me going out and, forming alliances and bringing people to the council table. And what I found is we have a council that's really aligned on goals and policies, which is awesome. Everyone knows we need housing now and wants to do it. What I've found more difficult is just sort of the soft touch stuff that you don't think about much, just building relationships, building trust, making sure that people feel good, that they feel safe in conversations, that they feel supported to make decisions about those policies. That stuff is going to be a huge element of whether we are successful or not. I'm having way more struggle balancing my time than I thought I would. When people ask me, hey, do you have time for this in a full-time job? I said, yeah, sure. Like, I'm chairing P&Z, I'm on NextGen, I'm running a ballot initiative, and I'm working. So I'm doing 80 hours a week. Maybe it'll be a little bit more. So yeah, it'll be fine. I wasn't wrong about the number of hours, but the number of requests that you get to be at events or to be doing things that, I don't want to be disrespectful, are not unproductive, but are not work time, where you're crafting policy, you're working with community members to gather feedback. You're more just ceremonially there. Those demands are huge, and they take up time that I was expecting to be working on more substantive stuff, and I have not yet figured out how to make that work. So that's like a big challenge that I'm working on right now that I maybe didn't anticipate.
All right.
Yeah.
We only have a few minutes left, but I know that you're very active on social media. But for people in the community who want to reach you, what are some of the best ways?
So the best way to reach me is just to email or call me. It's just skippy.mesirow@cityofaspen.com. If it's personal, it's at Gmail. My cell, which is listed on the city website, is 847-530-0811. If you are interested in figuring out what's happening, the best way is to go onto Instagram or Facebook, and there's a story feature if you haven't heard about it, but it's basically allows someone to take little snippets of their day, so a photo with a caption, a 15-second video, a poll about a question that I might have, and just literally chronologically watch the entire day unfold in very short snap. And I try and do that as much as I can. It was really weird at first to just open up your life, but the feedback has been amazing. The amount of people who watch, comment, and offer feedback that way has been great. So it's at Skippy Mesirow on Instagram. It's full name on Facebook, bear with me. Skippy Lee Upton Mesirow. And yeah, please follow along, offer feedback. I'm always looking for good ideas.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much. And we also have at thecityofaspen.com a page for council where people can easily find all this information.
And you now have a bio.
Yes.
Like 4 weeks later.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks so much for doing this and for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for watching.
You're watching CGTV, Community Government Television, Channel 11, Pitkin County, City of Aspen, and Town of Snowmass Village.
The City of Aspen, established in 1881, has over 220 full-time employees, a number that swells to more than 425 with the addition of seasonal and temporary workers. Organized into more than 20 departments, the City of Aspen provides major amenities like parks, a rec center, and open space, and services like utilities and police and Kids First to its residents and visitors. From the golf course to the Community Development Department, the Wheeler Opera House to the Parking Department, the City of Aspen and its employees strive to do the best job possible. A major goal of the city is keeping open communication between the government and the citizens. Welcome to City Matters, a show where the city does matter, and matters of the city are brought to you.